Well, thank you for doing this. It's good to meet you obviously through Zoom. The way I usually just start it is just go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners, what you do, the podcast that you're co-host for, and everything like that.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm open to anything and everything from podcasting to whatever else you want to talk about. Like right now, I'm dealing with figuring out teaching through the pandemic for a second round. Right now, Ontario's under lockdown, so we've got an extra week where we have to. Thought we were back at school, but we're not. Whatever. I'm easy.
So Ontario, you live? Is it Washington or Canada?
No, Canada. Ontario.
So,
I live just east of Toronto.
nice. Are you born and raised in Canada?
I was born in Pointe-Claire, Quebec.
Mhm.
So, but I left when I was 18 months old, and I've grown up around Toronto my whole life.
Nice. The closest I've been to Canada is Niagara Falls. But me and my buddies are for like spring break or something last year. We were gonna go up to British Columbia because I'm go to school in Oregon. So we were just gonna drive up. It's like 5-6 hours and go up there. So yeah,
I've never been on that side. I haven't been any further west than Ontario, which at some point, like for me to drive to BC is, I'm gonna say close to 24 hour.
yeah, probably, yeah.
Somewhere in that range, yeah.
Yeah, because I live on the west coast of the United States, but like for me to
Yeah.
drive to like Midwest, East Coast would be like 24 hours to 2 days. So
Yeah, we for our honeymoon, I've been married since 2013. We flew down to San Diego. We rented a car and drove up the Pacific Highway as far north as San Fran.
really?
And we did that along the mountains. And a fucking fantastic, best trip I've had in my life. It was amazing.
The longest drive I've ever made is I drive every year from my personal driving. I drive every, not really years, 6 months. When I go back to school, I drive through the entire Nevada into Idaho and then through Oregon. And that drive so it's like 17 hours. So I usually break it up into 2
Okay.
days. But the drive from Idaho, Boise to Portland area, which is like basically the coast of Oregon. It's the most beautiful drive I ever had. You basically, as soon as you get into Oregon, you drive along the Columbia River, and it's just beautiful scenery. The only thing I can say about the drive is sometimes, because in Oregon it rains all the fucking time. So sometimes when it's raining, I mean, it will monsoon basically the entire drive. So that's a little sketchy sometimes, but it's a beautiful drive.
How far are you from Seattle?
So when I'm up there, about 3 hours.
So you've obviously been there before.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So what we would love to do, we were lamenting. I just went black. Last time we wanted to get into wine country because that was a little further north than San Fran, and from there we wanted to get into Oregon. We only had 10 days. You can only get so far in 10 days, and really make it worthwhile. I love going. Have you been to Alcatraz?
No, but a bunch of my family lives in San Francisco, and every single time I'm down there, I see the island. I just want to go so bad.
Oh, it's the best trip I've ever had. Have you seen Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was running around the baseball diamond
Mm-hmm.
that's out in front, and you're doing all these. You're going through, and you see the cell where the guys were that escaped, and they take you to the cell where Al Capone was.
That's
And they tell you about the history of the island. And for a while there are people like the cooks, the guards, the nursing staff and everything. Benjamin Bratt from Law and Order was born on Alcatraz Island.
Really?
I think his dad was, I don't know, was he a guard or he was a doctor or he was something, he was born there.
That's
You can have a
wild.
whole family, they had a whole thing up there. And then for a while there, it was taken over by the natives, and they took it over as a protest for I don't know
I
how
think
long
I
that
knew
was.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was an amazing trip. Next time you're with your relatives, you got to go. But the one thing you do have to do is book it in advance.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm pretty sure that's the reason we couldn't go is because like when I was down there, it was like all 3 days were like taken up that I was there.
You can't just drive up. I mean, unless somebody's quote unquote scalping them, you
Yeah.
can't just walk up unless it's like maybe some off season where you can walk up, but you got to book them through. So we went through that, and we went to Muir Woods, like on one big package.
Muir, what's that?
That's where they have the tall sequoia trees.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know where that is.
And you can go through those, and that was neat. But it was cool. But Alcatraz was my want to go to.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I can ask you this: what do you think happened with those people at Alcatraz? Do you think they survived? Or do you think they drowned?
I think I don't know that all of them made it, but I do think at least one or two of them made it. Mm-hmm. And I think that they probably just blended in if they were smart. The thing was, they were hardened criminals, right? They weren't the brightest of the bunch, but they were smart enough to know what they needed to do. Like, they were crafty. So I think they probably did get there. But what happened to them after that? I mean, they could have died of hypothermia 3 hours later.
Yeah.
They could have crawled to the local pub or tavern, had a beer, and maybe shot their mouth off and got arrested as somebody. Who knows? Like, I don't know that they all made it. I mean, the Sharks could have gotten one of them.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you do. I was going to say, you do know that they hold a biathlon or whatever, triathlon there, and there's the race out to the rock and back. Like, it is a good. I think it's a couple miles. Cold, choppy water with sharks and everything else out there. Like, and it would be. You'd have to be in really good shape to have to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. That's one of the things I always think about when I think about that story is how cold and choppy it was, and they were in prison. So it's not like they're training to be Olympic swimmers or anything. They were just if they got it. I mean, maybe if they were working out all the time and maybe they fell in at the end, they could have maybe made it. But I was just thinking, I don't know. I think at least some of them died, and I do think one of them made it. I do think that one of them. It's better to think one of them made it than one of them didn't, because they didn't really find anything besides some of the leftovers of the raft, the makeshift raft, right?
Yeah, the raft. I think they found a couple of the paddles, perhaps washed up to shore. And there's that really the famous scene at the end of the movie where the flower's there and the guy smells it and he goes, "Oh, they did make it," or whatever. And that's the thing. It's like a DB Sweeney or whatever. You don't know if he made it out of the plane, and it's part of folklore, right?
Yeah. No, that's another one. That when I came across that story, that blows my mind, because that's the route because I remember reading it. I think it was my freshman year of college. So that route he took was basically the entire place that I live, from Oregon to Nevada, basically. And he jumped somewhere over the middle of Nevada, I believe. I don't want to butcher that. But when I heard that, I was like, oh, I hope he made it. Because he's just this like rugged guy. He's in a suit. He had those glasses on, and he just basically robbed this plane and he got away with it. So I kind of want him to.
I don't know the fine details of that tale. I don't know if it was a charter plane, or if it was just a small plane, or if it was a big commercial plane. I don't know what the details of that are, but I think that he enjoyed himself, and if he made it off, God bless him. Take the money and run.
Definitely. Do you believe in the Bermuda Triangle?
I believe there's probably a scientific, explanation for it. I think there might be some kind of scientific pole or something with the not the genetics, but with the magnetic pole. There could be something towards a certain section of it. Do I believe that if you drive through there or you float through there, you're going to have your boat sucked up? No. Do I believe there's some kind of water creature in that area? No. But there probably is a reason. I mean, it's probably pretty bad weather-wise, and especially the days before they had all the mechanical equipment to sonar and all that. You were screwed. I mean, if you got caught up in one of those big storms, it's the skill of the captain. It's the skill of the driver. And if you're going to go down, I mean, if you have a 30-foot wave, you're going to go down. But there's there's other parts of the world where there's been lots of ships go down. I mean,
yeah.
It's pretty freaky though.
I always think about planes because I think they think that Amelia Earhart disappeared around there. Again, I don't know the exact details, but I think they think that Amelia Earhart disappeared around somewhere around the Bermuda Triangle in her plane. So that's the thing. Like I always think, like, is there just an island where all these people get washed up to, or is it just like you said, like some scientific reason the poles don't connect the same ways, or like it like disconnects for like so they can't speak to the radio towers. Boats I totally understand because like you're already in the water and you can just get capsized. But like planes are the ones that
I
speak.
mean, you're in it. You're probably in a dead zone. Like you're literally in the middle of nowhere, and the closest land is I don't know how many miles away. So even if you did have cell phone service or you did have walkie-talkies, it's a long way to travel to get to them. You know, you got to have pretty strong electronic equipment to be able to talk to them, right?
Yeah, that's when they started telling me about that they're gonna sail a Titanic 2. I was like, just don't. Honestly, just don't sail the Titanic 2. That just doesn't sound like something that I would get on, but something that you should just sail just because it's bound to fail.
Let's let somebody else take that chance.
Yeah.
Let's let's see what the results are, and let's just somebody,
Yeah.
no doubt some teenage girl in her first year university is going to take her selfie and videotape it and what have you, and wait till it's going 5 years.
Hmm.
Let's see how it does.
That's something I always think nowadays. Like if there's a plane crash or if there's like a big situation like the Titanic, somebody would be streaming it. We'd get to watch it probably. There'd be
But
some media service that is recording this catastrophe.
then there was the one, was it not that long ago? Is it the Philippines where the plane went down and it just disappeared? They couldn't find it.
Malaysia, I think.
Malaysia.
Yeah.
That was it. Malaysian. And they eventually did find it, but it was, I mean, what people don't always understand is, yes, we've got technology. Yes, we've got scientific breakthroughs. Yes, we have advances in transportation. The world is friggin' huge.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I mean, to this day, we're still finding things that, I mean, in our lifetime, we won't have known about. Like, I mean, if you believe in religion, it could be a God plan. If you believe in science, it could be a scientific plan. If you just believe in being an atheist, but things are around, there are stuff we just haven't got to. And there's stuff out there that you can't explain. I mean, to think of the giant pandas that you go to see at the zoos and they travel around, they weren't discovered till the beginning of the 20th century.
I did not know that.
And they're not small animals. Like, they're big fucking panda bears. And they're like, I don't know how many pounds they are, 500-pound things. But because nobody had been to Africa, the deep remote part of the forests or what have you, they weren't found. So now they're Asia. They're Asian.
Yeah, they're Asians, I think.
They're Asian. Nobody had gotten there. And when you think of like the coelacanth, the coelacanth fish that had been dormant for thousands of years since the dinosaurs, and then all of a sudden these, I don't know if they're Taiwanese, Asian, one of the Asian fishing trawlers brings this thing up in his net, and it's a coelacanth, and it turns out there's a whole group of them. So who knows?
I like to think that if Bigfoot does exist, he's hiding from us because he doesn't want to talk to us.
Yeah, you know what? I'm really big in the cryptozoological. For a long time, like in high school and stuff, I sucked all that stuff in. And, the sea creatures, the Bigfoot. I don't know that there's necessarily like a Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot out there. But there might be a strain of black bear. There could be a strain of white bear or some kind of bear out there that we don't know about. That's a variant of what's out there that just could be recluse, just stays away.
Yeah, definitely. I know for a fact there's animals out there that we haven't found because they are staying away because they don't want to be with other animals, let alone humans. And whether they understand what humans are or something, I know there's got to be, especially in the ocean. I don't know what it is, like 7% of the ocean we've discovered. There's so many different species that we have no idea about. And then to think about octopi or octopuses and dolphin and how smart they are, like there's got to be something inside of the ocean that is so wickedly smart that it could, like, not that it could compete with like humans itself, but just like that we don't even understand it because we have no idea that it exists, you know?
Yeah, like I don't believe there's a plesiosaur out there or anything like that, because can't see that. But who knows? I mean, how many people have been down to Mariana's Trench? You know, like how deep is that? You know, like a handful of people can take the pressure and get down there, or even the structure of mechanisms to get down there. It's pretty tough. There's dark caves. They can have underground earthquakes. They can have. So who knows? I mean, I don't think that there's a new blue whale out there or anything like that. But I mean, there are variants of sharks that they discover every year. I mean, there's variants of various, you know, single-celled organisms that are floating all over there, but we have no idea what's down there. So, you know what? It's dark. It's deep. I mean, I don't know how many miles down it goes, 3 miles or something down there, but there's all kinds of stuff down there. In the water, in the air. I mean, you go to the Brazilian rainforest. I mean, they're discovering new types of frogs and birds and whatever. So
I think it's crazy that they're cutting down, like the way that they're cutting down the trees to build like for agriculture and things like that, and they're finding like remnants of old civilizations from inside the Brazilian rainforest that you're talking about. I think that's crazy because like for a long time people didn't think that there was like tribes that lived inside the Amazon rainforest, and now that we like they're finding ancient remnants of these ancient civilizations covered up by moss and grass and things like that. And that just blows my mind because it just changes the way we think about early humans. Like every year they're finding different things of what humans were. Like they just found the Ardipithecus or whatever not too long ago, which is like the earliest descendant of humans, which is just wickedly wild because like he has long arms and long legs like a human, but like it goes against everything that they thought old humans were.
Yeah, I mean, my mom took anthropology at university. I took history as my degree in university. There's all kinds of stuff out there that, I mean, there's whole civilizations I have no doubt we haven't discovered yet that had an impact on our planet. I mean, we can't even understand some of the Aztec cave scratchings. We can't understand the quote-unquote caveman stuff. We're always interpreting things. There's got to be, I mean, every once in a while you find some really preserved dinosaur that was out in the Alberta tar sands that was under something or whatever, somewhere in Asia in some deep cave somewhere they're finding. It's going to be well beyond our lifetime. And I mean, I think it's going to be 5 or 6 generations and they still won't even know everything. I mean, there's no way they're going to know.
No, yeah. Well, we're going to keep discovering things until there are no more humans, I would think.
Is this part of the recording, or is this just us rambling?
No, it's just part of the recording.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Okay, because I was waiting for an introduction and stuff.
No, yeah. This is well, the introduction that I usually do is just like, hey, you know, introduce yourself, tell me about your podcast. Go ahead. But this was even like, this is the stuff that I usually get into. It's usually just like this long conversation.
Just rambling. Okay. Yeah. So that's cool. So you're going to probably cut and chop and edit it and make it however you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I have no problem with it. I haven't said anything I'm ashamed of yet.
Yes. Yeah. So, but yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners and talk about the 2 podcasts that you co-host for.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Collin, for inviting me on. This was a great pleasure to be on. I found you on one of the chat groups and I thought I'm going to go in and give you guys a shout because I love helping out new podcasters. Not that I'm not new. I've only been in the business 2 years. I'm a co-host of 2 podcasts, one called Land of the Creeps, a horror movie podcast, and another one called Phantom Galaxy, where we do horror, sci-fi, fantasy, action, anything kind of in that realm. And my path to podcasting is quite interesting because for a lot of years, I wasn't into podcasting. I'm very late to the game. Maybe about 2015, 2016, I started actually listening to them. Because prior to that, I remember seeing one and you had to download it and I was wary of getting viruses and that kind of crap. So I was like, no. So about 2016, I've been a lifelong horror movie fan since my earliest days of watching the Universal horror films. And so I was looking for horror podcasts and I listened to a bunch and I came across one called the Horror Movie Podcast, which is one of the gold standards in the industry. Really big, popular podcast. If you look it up, gentlemen and ladies, you'll find it with thousands of hits. And I started listening to it, and every once in a while I'd email them in a suggestion or write on their message board, etc. And then they had a guest on one time. They were doing a series of episodes on 80s slashers. I don't know about you, Collin, if you like an 80s slasher, but I love an 80s slasher. And they had a guest on called Gregamortis. And he started talking about his love of them too. And he was the co-host of a podcast called Land of the Creeps. And so then I kind of had listened to it already, but I took a deeper dive into it. And he's a really interesting guy, and he had some really good co-hosts. And I started emailing him, you know, my thoughts, my suggestions, my input, that sort of thing. And I would just do it from time to time when I had time. And eventually he got back to me and said, you know what, you seem to know so much and are so interested. Why don't you just come on the damn show and co-host with me? Because one of their co-hosts was away and they needed to have somebody come in. And so myself and another podcaster called Greg Bench, we did a review of the best movies of 2018, horror movies. And I've been on ever since. So they couldn't get rid of me. So I'm on this podcast. And it's a really great podcast because we're on, you know, your podcast will be 45 minutes, an hour 15 at the longest. We did one recently that was 6 hours where we examined the horror movies of Nordic Europe. So, or Scandinavian countries. We are a minimum 3.5, usually 4 to 5 hours. Every second week it comes out. And we deep dive every week, every 2 weeks, I'm watching about 25 hours worth of movies. And so I love to get deep into them. And it's not necessarily the ones everybody knows. It's not just your Friday the 13th, and it's not just your Halloweens, although we love all those films. We'll dive deep and deep and deep. I like to try to find myself something I've never seen before so I can delve into it. And about, I don't know, 8 months ago or so, our show is very interactive. We do giveaways, we have a phone line, we do all kinds of emails, that sort of thing. We give shout outs on Facebook and Twitter and all your social media platforms. We had a listener that kept calling in called Nathan Bartlebaugh. And Nathan would give emails and he'd call in and he'd give some really good suggestions. And I friended him and we started chatting it up. And we got on pretty well. And eventually he asked me to co-host his podcast that he had before and he had put to bed, and he was relaunching after 2 years, called The Phantom Galaxy. And so I was hesitant at first because I already had something going on. So I guest host with him. And then I decided, he asked me again, why don't you just be a permanent co-host as well? So I've been roped in twice to be a co-host of a podcast. And The Phantom Galaxy is fantastic. Nathan's a fantastic guy. And we do science fiction, we do horror, we do fantasy, and we kind of do everything in between. Now, the one thing I never said about Land of the Creeps is the co-host. Gregamortis, is so laid back, so easygoing. We love men, we love women, we love anybody of all denomination, any age. You want to listen, come on and listen. And we'll invite you on to listen and be a part of the audience. My other co-host is somebody called Dave Becker, Dr. Shock. And if anybody out there wants to just listen to pure fun, Dave Becker can stream a story off about movies. He's an encyclopedia of knowledge, this man. Not just horror movies. Movies of all genres. He loves westerns, he loves dramas, he loves crime movies. Please, I'm not begging anybody to come listen because everybody is of their own free will and their free choice. But if you have any interest in horror movies, please check out Land of the Creeps because we will have you on. And if you have a little bit of a tinge towards the sci-fi side with horror and schlockiness, come to the Phantom Galaxy because Nathan and I will have a lot of fun with your input. So that's a little bit from me. I don't know about you, Collin.
Yeah. So when I saw that you did a horror podcast, I was like, I need to talk to this guy. When I was little, so I'm not too old. I'm 20. I'm about to be 21, but I'm young. But when I was young, the first movies, I love horror movies. My girlfriend doesn't let me watch them because she's scared of them, but I love them. Like one of my favorite movies when I was little. I can't remember when it came out. I think it was 9 or 8 or 9 or 10. One of the but the newest Friday the 13th. I watched that. And I wasn't supposed to technically, but I loved it. And then I got me back and I started watching all of the Friday the 13th. And so that I would say that's my favorite horror like film series. But then it got me into like, I don't know if you know, I'm sure you do know the movie Mirrors. Um,
Yep.
yeah, I love that movie.
Donald Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes, yes. I just remember there's one scene that I was fascinated by where this girl's looking in the mirror and she just like basically rips her head apart. I love that scene. So I've always been fascinated by horror movies. And then I started getting into more, not like thriller horror, but that kind of like that area, like 1408 with,
Yep. John Cusack. I've
John
reviewed that
Cusack.
on the
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
I
We have
love
an
that
episode
movie.
on trippy horror films, and that was one of my picks.
So what would you describe as a trip, like besides that, what would you describe as
Trippy. We had Nathan Bartlebaugh was actually a co-host on that. We brought him in, and we kind of leave it up. What I love about the horror genre is it's open to interpretation. So some people, a big debate is, do you consider Silence of the Lambs a horror film? Yay or nay? Like there's elements of fantasy, there's elements of sci-fi, there's elements of action, there's elements of crime serials, there's elements of monsters, there's elements of nudity, there's elements of blood. If somebody says it's a horror, my definition is this: is it scary to them? Then it's horrific. If it's a movie that makes you shudder a little bit, yeah. Like I wouldn't say a movie like Scarface. You know the scene in the shower with the chainsaw. That's as scary and bloody as you're going to find. I wouldn't call that a horror film. But if you want to argue with me that Silence of the Lambs is, yeah, absolutely, sure. I have an argument with my best friend: is Jaws a horror film? Yay or nay? You can make a legitimate argument either way. He does not. I do. And that's the beauty of the genre. So for trippiness, I call it a trippy movie, a sensory movie. Something that uses your senses and kind of takes you somewhere that a standard X to Y film doesn't. Have you seen the film Midsommar?
Mm-mm.
I
know, but I heard about it. It's on Netflix, right?
It might be on Netflix. It was out last year. A big film, Ari Aster, like 2.5 hour film. Some of the weirdest, trippiest stuff out there, but it's really a story that's told, and horrific things happen in the story. You want to argue that's a horror film? Great. If you don't want to, great. I respect your opinion. So a movie like Suspiria, the original. Have you seen Suspiria? Suspiria, the Dario Argento. I'm not a fan of it. I know it's blasphemous. People are going to tar and feather me, but I don't like the original Suspiria. But that's a movie that's trippy. It's of the senses. Jacob's Ladder. Have you seen Jacob's Ladder?
Yeah.
Yes. Again, trippy film. It's taking you back and forwards. Often, or the one that's most recent, Mandy. Have you seen Mandy?
No.
With Nicolas Cage.
Oh, I think I watched the trailer though. I didn't watch it though.
Nicolas Cage is, I mean, you can do a whole podcast just on Nicolas Cage trippy wacko films. But again, to me, a trippy film is one that there might be drugs involved. It might be nightmares. It might be time travel. It might be, the soundtrack, something that isn't just your straightforward narrative. And I mean, if you go into the Land of the Creeps, which I hope you'll put into the show notes, you can find it on there. It's about 6 months old and a fun episode. So yeah, we'll take any topic. I'm unique in the horror genre, and I'll watch anything. You give me a fairy tale, you give me a fantasy, you give me a slasher. I love torture porn. Give me Saw, give me Hostel. I've seen the August Underground. I've seen the Japanese guinea pig films. I can watch those. But then I can also really, really love Frankenstein from 1933. I can also love Bride of Frankenstein. I can also watch Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Like, you give me anything, anywhere, I'll at least give it a shot. The only one I won't watch, and this is a pretty wide swath, is there's a series of films called The Vomit Dolls, I think it's called, where it's these chicks get naked and throw up on each other. That's not my thing. But pretty much anything else I'll watch.
So a film series like Insidious or even Sinister or just those jump kind of scares, how would you describe those type of movies?
If they're going for paranormal, that's one thing. I think a film that strictly relies on jump scares is cheap. I mean, anybody can have a dark theater and then you get a jump scare. And when done effectively, they're very good. But you can't rely on that as a horror trope to get your story forward. I think it needs a bit more than that, because there's a lot of really low budget, cheap ones, or even high budget ones. Those Insidious ones get a pretty decent budget. Lee Winnell and him. I'm not a huge fan of the jump scare unless it's done with a purpose and done effectively, and not, you don't go back to the well every 10 minutes and do a jump scare. Like at a certain point, you're just like, whatever. So I am not the biggest fan of paranormal films, but when a paranormal film is done well, it's done really effectively. The problem is there's so much schlock out there, you got to dig through 100 of them to find 2 good ones.
So with a movie like, did you see Fractured? Fractured. I can't remember who is the main star, but basically his family is driving to their family house for Christmas, and then they go to the hospital and they lose the daughter. Have you seen that movie?
I may have. In the last year, I've seen 489 movies.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yes, I might have seen it. Now, I have this app. Anybody should get this app called Letterboxd. Mm-hmm. And Letterboxd is where you can track your movies, you can watch reviews or whatever. In the last 2 years, I think I'm close to 900 movies. So every once in a while, they kind of slip. Now, they're not all horror. Yeah. But 90% of them are.
90% of them are, yeah. So, but like the more thriller type of movies, could you still classify those as horror? Because you said you could, but what is the fine, like where is the line drawn between thriller, drama, and horror, or is it subjective, you know?
I think it's very subjective. I think it's up to the viewer. My thing is this: does it stick with you? Does it scare you? Is it a horrific situation? But there is a line where this is just drama that's a little chilling, as opposed to a horror film. I just recently did a podcast appearance on a podcast called The Undead Wookiee with Hugh Lloyd. Check it out, it's pretty good. And we did a movie called 10 Rillington Place. Have you heard of 10 Rillington Place? 10 Rillington Place was about a crime that happened in England in the 1950s, where just after World War II, there was an older man in London in a row house in a poor part of London that would take women, do backdoor abortions, and kill them. And it was a real life story where somebody else got the blame and they got hung, and they changed the British legal system. They pretty much not long thereafter stopped committing the death penalty because he was killed and the wrong person was hung. And it's ominous, it's scary, it's spooky, it's dark, it's deep. I love the film. But then you get to argue, is that a horror film? Is Silence of the Lambs a horror film? Is Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer a horror film? Then you get into the, I watched the recent one with Zac Efron about Ted Bundy. Is that a horror film? My blanket answer is yes. You could argue either way. There are some people that'll say, no, it's a crime film. All right, fine. But a crime film could also be a film about a bank robbery. That's also a crime film. A crime film could be The Godfather. Now, The Godfather is not horror. So there are fine lines out there that people won't cross over, and I get it. I respect it. That's your thing. Just don't piss on my lawn if I consider it horror. We each have our own things. I have certain areas of horror that I love. My go-to is always, if I don't know what to watch, I can always go to a giallo. You know what a giallo film is? A giallo is a Italian horror, or an Italian film from the mid-'60s to the early '80s. That's a crime film. It's almost an Agatha Christie type film, where there's always a man in black who's the killer, with dark boots, black gloves, usually has an overcoat, and you don't see the killer revealed until the end. And there's lots of very red blood. There's usually sexuality and nudity. There's usually a killing for a reason that we're made aware of at the beginning, but we just don't know who did it. And we have to figure out. So it becomes a cat and mouse kind of until the end. Some of them are done really well, and some of them are done pretty sleazy and pretty cheesy. I love the giallo films. Guys like Fulci, Dario Argento, Sergio Martino. Look those guys up. So I can always watch them. And the other ones I love are the Hammer films. Are you familiar with Hammer Studios?
Yeah, I've definitely, that's familiar with me. But what are Hammer
Yeah,
films exactly?
Hammer. Well, the Hammer Studios was a studio out of England that did films from probably from the 40s up until the mid 70s.
Okay.
And while they did other genres of film, their big claim to fame is the horror films of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. They did the remake of Dracula, the horror of Dracula. Christopher Lee did Frankenstein, and they did a lot of those, and they were really gothic. They were always the scene was beautiful. It was old. It was usually 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. They used castles. They were known for blood. They were known for beautifully shot, and they were known for TNA. And that's what you want. And just zany kills, outrageous stuff. Like there was one with Peter Cushing where he dealt with the 7 vampire samurais or something. Like there's all kinds of, those are the ones that I enjoy. The Hammer films are great. But I can watch anything.
So back to what you said about the like the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie. I think what someone could consider a horror movie is if it incites fear in others through, like, without showing the horrific nudity or like the gore, but more like if it incites the fear inside of the watcher. So like by knowing that he is a serial killer and that he murdered all these people, and by like keeping it like honestly in your own imagination, I think that could also be considered horror. You know what I mean? I think like if you scare the person at all, even through their own imagination, you could consider that horror, you know?
Absolutely. And with a Ted Bundy type situation, or I remember as a 12-year-old or whatever, they had one with Brian Dennehy where he portrayed John Wayne Gacy as the clown. Dennehy's a fantastic actor. And both same kind of thing. I think it kind of depends on how it's portrayed. If it's done in a way where it's strictly a courtroom drama and you're reading through the transcripts and people are just acting that out, you could argue that's nothing but a drama with a horrific slant to it. But if you're actually going back and getting into the character analysis, if they show the crimes, if they get into with the motivation, if there's some cringeworthy kind of stuff, then it goes into that horror realm. Like I wouldn't argue some of the trials of the Nazis, even though it's horrific. I wouldn't consider that horror. But if you showed a film demonstrating Mengele's experiments, yeah, I would call that horror. So there's that, you know, it's all about context. It's about how it's portrayed. It's about what's being shown, you know.
I think some of the best movies or some of the scariest movies are movies that are, all right, not based on real events, but like you said, like the Mengele experiments, that would be horrific. Or the I know there was a gang of Japanese troops in World War II that did some horrific things, where they would like freeze arms and then pour hot water on it. They were trying to.
Have you seen Men Behind the Sun? That if you're talking about that kind of stuff, it's over the top silly, and I don't think it's based on reality. But I think there's just a twinge of reality that's used. Men Behind the Sun. Check that out.
Are you a believer in ghosts?
I'm a believer, not necessarily in, you know, Casper kind of ghost, or in, you know, a Christmas Carol kind of ghost, or, you know, that I don't think. I'm a big believer in spirits. I do believe there's spirits out there. I do believe that there are even, you quote unquote, angels that there to touch people in many different ways. I do believe that there are spirits there that are meant to tell people things or to have certain things done to help further a certain cause. But I don't think that there's poltergeist ghosts, such as, you know, I don't think there's anything out here that, and I'm sitting in my basement, I don't think there's one that's going to rattle the lights above me and make me crap my pants. I don't think that. But I do think there are spirits that are put on this earth for a reason. that have a purpose. And they might not be here forever. They might just be for one particular reason, or they might just be to kind of guide over people. So that's kind of how I go.
Yeah, because I was wondering if you believed, like, is there an energy that could haunt a certain place? Like, do you believe in haunted buildings? Like, not from maybe from a person who died, but just from like an energy, like the exact opposite of the angel being here for a purpose. Do you believe that places could be haunted by certain energies?
I think they probably could be for a specific amount of time. I don't necessarily believe that there's that haunted house that's going to be haunted for 500 years. My personal belief is ghosts or spirits or apparitions, or however you want to call them, are there for a specific reason. I mean, I don't know that there's the old adage of, oh, it's a soul that never made it to heaven, so he's just here to cause havoc forever. I think that's a bunch of rubbish. But I do believe that there are evil spirits that may need to be put into place, and that's where people that have that skill to do what they do, because I've interviewed people that do that for a living, and they genuinely believe they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, that's not ghost hunters, but spirit, like getting spirits out of places. That's an interesting one, because not only do humans have this fascination with the creepy and the horror, and like that's why we love horror films, but it's like there's something we have with the, like, a relationship with the mystical, or like things that are beyond us. Like, not only, like, it goes back to what we were talking about, Bigfoot and those the crypto animals, like the Loch Ness monster. Humans have a fascination with things that are scary and things that they do because we don't understand them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get it. And let's be honest. People want to know what they don't know, and there's a lot more in this world that we don't know than that we do know. And anybody that'll tell you differently is talking out of the wrong side of their mouth, because we need to know. And just by, I don't care if you're religious. I don't care if you're not. Everybody has a desire to want to know more, and that push to know more. You know, maybe it's you want to know more about math. Maybe you want to know more about science. Maybe you want to know about, I don't know, knitting or whatever. You just always want to know more about something, and so it leads people. I mean, that's what drives science. They need to know and to help to improve. I mean, Oppenheimer wasn't a bad guy. He thought he was furthering science.
Yeah.
You know, the guy that dropped the atomic bomb was doing it because it was out of orders from the military, because science told him to do. I mean, people want to know. I mean, you go back to Darwin and you go back to Einstein, and I mean, the people working right now at this moment coming up with COVID things, they're doing it because they want to know and they want to help. So that's just human nature.
Where do you think this fascination of horror comes from, though? Besides the fact that we do want to know, where do you think the fascination with horror comes from, and things that are fearful?
I'll tell you from my personal point of view. Why do I love horror? I friggin' love to be scared. There's a certain adrenaline rush you get. There's a certain feeling in the back of your neck, and the hair stands up, and above your head you start to feel it, and I love that feeling. You know, you see those memes on Facebook and the social platform saying, what kind of freako watches a horror film at night in the dark by yourself? Me. That's me. I want to see it. My problem is I'm so jaded, because I honestly haven't had a horror movie scare me this millennium. I haven't had it, because I've seen so many of them that nothing has gotten to me. I have the moments have shocked me. I've had moments where they're cringeworthy, but I haven't had one where at the end of the day, I wouldn't go upstairs and take a shower in the dark. I will watch some sort of gruesome horror film, then go down in my basement and fix my furnace. I don't care. Like, give it to me straight. I can walk through any of the haunted houses and whatever. I don't know that I'd ever go through McCamey Mansion or McCamey Manor. I don't know if you know that one. It's the guy down in, he used to be in San Diego, but I think he's in Virginia or something now, where he sets up a haunted house in his room where you sign up for basically, like, I don't know, 6 hours of torture. And you don't have to pay for it. I think all he asks for is dog food donations. And anybody up there, look up McCamey Manor, and you're nobody has ever gotten through it. Nobody. Like, they physically water torture you, they tie you up, they make you eat disgusting things. That's not my bag. I'm not, I don't want to be humiliated and almost drowned. But I think people want to be scared. In their hearts, they want to feel that adrenaline rush going through them. I think they like the hair standing up. I think they like or on the other side, they like the thought of other things being out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about. They like the thought of there actually being ghosts. They like the thought of there actually being spirits. And this kind of, I wouldn't say says that there is, but it, makes them open to the possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain segment of society that wants no part of them. And I get it. Could be for religious reasons. Could be they don't want the blood. Could be they get nightmares. Could be they don't want to be scared at all. Could be they've gone through some traumatic events and they just don't want any reminder of it. Mm-hmm. I'm completely get that. And anybody that says they don't like it, hey, don't crap on me for liking it. I don't crap on you for not liking it. Everybody has their own deal. But I think it's intrinsic human nature. I mean, you have a desire there's certain inherent things in humans: to eat, to feel loved, to procreate, and to be scared. And that's one of them. And you're going to be scared regardless. Some people just want it, and some people don't. I'm that kind of guy that when I give blood, I watch the needle go in. I sit and I literally will say, okay, let's see it. It doesn't bother me.
I like horror. I can't do that stuff. I hate needles. My girlfriend's mom does IVs. Okay. And so she, every time I'm like if I get in a cold or something, she's like, oh, hey, let me give you an IV. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't watch anything go in my arm, in my vein. I can't do that stuff.
You're that guy that looks away, then gets the juice and cookie and sits on the couch.
Yeah, basically. But I love being scared. I do.
I literally love it. Like it's a type of high. It's a different type of high than, say, from sexual activity. It's a different type of high from getting married. It's a type of different high than holding your hands with your girlfriend or whatever. It's just an adrenaline rush. It's no different than, I think, the people that love spicy peppers. You get that rush. Or people that love going on the roller coasters and they go on, super G loop-de-loops and stuff. It's the same kind of thing. I love my peppers. I can't stand roller coasters. Everybody gets it a different way. I remember going on Magic Mountain when I was a kid at Disney World, and I closed my eyes the whole time when it went around. It's just not my thing. But everybody gets their adrenaline rush in some way.
Yeah, roller coasters are a weird one because I like roller coasters, but I hate being ill. And so some roller coasters, they make me woozy, and I'm just like, that's what I don't like. I like the feeling, the adrenaline rush of roller coasters, like the one at the Matterhorn at, I don't know if you know what that is. It's at
I've
Disneyland.
heard of it.
It's the big mountain at Disneyland, and it's you go through and there's Yetis and things like that. I love that one. I love Space Mountain. They turned it into a Star Wars thing, but it used to be basically this really dark, inside roller coaster. You listen to Red Hot Chili Peppers. Love that one. I just hate being sick.
I was there in the mid '80s, so it was probably Wham or something like that.
Yeah.
Motley Crue, maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do think it is that the fear, though. Back to what we were talking about. I do think it is that humans do. It is an intrinsic thing that humans not necessarily they want, but it's a feeling that we've always had through evolution, everything, like you said, to procreate, to find love, to be together socially together with other people, and we like to stay alive. So fear is one of the things we just are so naturally inclined to. And so to be afraid and not have your life endangered, I think that is a fascination of humans. To be so scared to the point where let's say you crap your pants, but know that you're still going to be alive at the end of the day. I think that is where the line goes. Because no one, there are some people, I don't mean to shit on you if you are like this. No one, when they're afraid for their life or their family's life, no one wants that. But they want to be afraid where they're safe,
Yeah. The part of it is adrenaline rush. Part of it is fear is healthy in small doses. You need a bit of fear for, if you have a family, you want to make sure that they're protected. For self-preservation, a bit of fear is good. You can go back to Machiavellian theory, of war and that kind of stuff. a little bit of fear is good, but you can't live in fear. And that's kind of where we're kind of seeing with the COVID and people being inside, and you get the higher bouts of depression and things. A lot of it is fear that's now come out that was maybe sitting dormant for a while. And so then there's healthy fear and there's unhealthy fear. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen those YouTube videos where it's usually girls, but it's also guys. They go on the roller coasters, or the ones that go up and down in high amounts. And the look on their face looks, one, orgasmic, but also thrilling, and it's the adrenaline rush. Like however you, or the people, I just watched the show on Netflix. You can find it. I forget. It's a series of 5 or 6 where they go over weird sports. There's one about hair cutting. There's one about frog jumping. There's one about people that eat the chili peppers, the hottest of the hottest. And you can just see their faces red, and their nose is dripping, the sweat is coming out, men and women, but it's an adrenaline rush. They love it and they want it, and that's how they do their thing. People do it in other ways. They go running, they work out, they have sexual activity, they listen to music. Maybe they're big on their work. Their work is their big drive, and that gives them a rush to do a presentation in front of the boss or whatever. Everybody gets it somehow. This is just, I find, as long as you take it in perspective, a safe outlet for that adrenaline rush.
So I just remembered a question I had for you earlier.
Sure.
Or when we were just rambling. We were talking about basically the evolution, not really the evolution of humans, but how things we don't understand. And I wanted to ask you, do you think, because there's a big push right now saying that the development of the human and like the first people to think came from psychedelics. Are you a believer of that?
Sorry, what's the theory?
So it's the stone to ape theory. So basically that when we were evolving, and when we came down for trees, we were walking across the Sahara, and they would eat magic mushrooms, and it connected more things in the brain, and that's basically what caused consciousness. Are you a believer in that, or do you think it was just gonna happen?
I've never heard of that. I'm gonna have to look into that. I had some magic mushrooms about 20 years ago. It's been that long. So when you were coming out of Mama, I was tripping out. I don't know. Do they say that because of the synapses going off in their brain and because of it gave you a higher enlightenment, that perhaps it set man off in a certain path that it might not have gotten to otherwise?
Yeah, that's what
I don't know. That's interesting. I'd have to really give that some thought. Maybe I'm gonna have to get some munchies and do my own experimentation. I don't know. That is good. I don't know, because the thing with ancient man is there's so many theories, but we're never really gonna know.
Yeah.
Right. So it's, something will be in vogue for 5 years, and then, once upon a time they thought it was a meteorite from the earth, from the sky. Like, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who does know? No one will ever know, like you said. No one's gonna know. It's just cool to have people just think up these ways it could have happened, these theories. I do think it is wild how ancient humans, or not necessarily ancient, but the Amazonians and the Aztecs and the Native Americans and all these different older humans, they had their own different types of psychedelics in their own tribes, and how to do things in a certain way, like peyote, and I can't remember the Aztec one, but also the really crazy one is ayahuasca with the Amazonians, because it comes from 2 plants that are nowhere near each other in the Amazon that have to be brewed together to create this experience, this transformative spiritual experience. So I do think it is weird that all throughout society, or all throughout human history, we've had this inclination to things that bring us into another realm, and that goes along with this horror and this even music, playing games, just the way that humans act and things, the fascination of, like we said, things we don't understand, we just want to know. And all these things, we really tap into this realm. Like when you're in the game, say I play football, when I'm right there, when I'm feeling it, I'm in the zone almost. Or when you're really scared, you're in that moment in that movie. Or when you're I've never had any psychedelic experience, but I'm guessing when you take psychedelic, you're in that zone. So I think it is this fascination to the spiritual realm,
I mean, the other tie-in to horror is that we haven't really touched upon is one of the appeals to it is it takes you away to another place. It gives you a fantastic spot in your brain for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And as does, some quote unquote think that psychedelics do, or maybe a good song or a good story does. It just takes you away. And so you can forget about your world fears. Maybe you've got financial issues or family issues or work issues or whatever. Watch a movie. It doesn't have to be horror. It could be any movie. It just takes you away for that hour and a half. And I think that's one of the appeals to horror or any other genre, science fiction or fantasy or any other drama, comedy, country and western, romance, whatever. It gives you a place away from reality for 90 minutes, 120 minutes, 180 minutes. So I think there is a definite tie-in to all of that. Do you play for a Pacific University football team?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah? What position are you?
I'm actually the punter.
Oh, you're the punter.
Yeah.
So you're the guy that everybody just kind of leaves to themselves.
Basically.
They kick in the back 40, and then every once in a while the coach will say, "Okay, let's get a better hang time."
Yep. Basically.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I do. It's a weird position to play. It's fun though because it's like I tell people this. It's like a different sport inside of a sport. So that's why I love doing it.
Now, do you hang out with the place kicker, or is that another entirely different?
No, we all hang out. The place kicker,
the holder.
Yeah, well, I'm the holder, I would say,
Okay.
and then the long snapper too. We all hang out together.
That's cool. Yeah, because I've been a lifelong sports fan my whole life. Mm-hmm. Any sport, anything that there's a score counted on, I'll watch. And I've been a Green Bay Packer fan since 1982. Like my dad liked them, I liked them. And so their current punter is J.K. Scott, and he's known for, I guess, his high kicks, but they aren't necessarily hanging as long as they should be. So I guess that's something you got to work on.
I wasn't gonna say this because it's my first time meeting you, but our family's Vikings fans, so I was looking.
And you couldn't beat the goddamn Sea Hags.
Yeah, I know.
On the weekend, that would have helped out Green Bay a whole heck of a lot.
As long as we don't help out Green Bay, I'm okay with it.
But I do have Dalvin Scott on a couple of my fantasy teams, and he's had a fantastic.
Phenomenal. He's no. I will never compare him to Adrian Peterson. Adrian Pearson's my favorite football player of all time. But Dalvin Cook is phenomenal, and our rookie Justin Jefferson too. He's had a really good year.
Yeah, but Kirk Cousins, I wouldn't hold my he's good, but he's only good. Like he's kind of like Andy Dalton was in his prime. Only good to a certain level, but he's not getting to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he's had a really good year, but I don't think he's it for us. I think we need that quarterback to get us over the hump,
And the problem with Minnesota right now is they'll probably finish something like 7-9, 8-8. So they're in the middle of the draft. So they're not going to get that high impact quarterback. So you got to try to find somebody in the third and fourth round, like a Jalen Hurts, to work it. Because Jalen Hurts, I don't think was drafted till the third round. I don't think.
No, yeah, Jalen Hurts is phenomenal. I was watching his game against Arizona last week, and him and Kyler Murray went pound for pound, basically, like 4 touchdowns each. Like it was phenomenal. I was a big Jalen Hurts fan when he was at Alabama, and then he transferred to Oklahoma, and I was still because I wanted him to work out, and so now the fact that he's starting the NFL, I'm a fan.
I honestly think that Wentz will be moved.
Yeah.
The only thing preventing it is he's got a big salary. So it has to be a team that has the room.
Yeah.
And the only team I know of off the top of my head that could manage his salary are the Jets. And the Jets have to make a decision on Darnold, or if the Jets finish third, do they take a guy like Josh Fields or Kyle Trask?
Yeah.
Or do they stick with what they got?
I think the Jets are going to draft Justin Fields, like you said, and then I think Carson Wentz is going to the Patriots. But that's just my thing.
Yeah, they do have the space, and selfishly, I'm in a very large football fantasy where it's a dynasty, and I drafted Jalen Hurts in the 19th round last year. So I can keep him for a while. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
Now let me say, as a punter, who is your favorite punter or your punting hero in the league? I know the guy that kicks for the Titans has a big following.
So I did all the kicks, so I can still do it. That's like where I like my main one, so I can do field goals and everything. So growing up, when I was in high school, I loved field goals and everything like that. It's just now I'm a punter. My favorite punter of all time is Pat McAfee. Don't know if you know who that is.
Oh yeah. He interviews Aaron Rodgers every week.
Yeah. But playing right now, my favorite punter right now, you could always go Thomas Morstead of the Saints. I did like Marquette King for a while. Obviously, he's not in the league anymore. But I would say right now, favorite punter, Johnny Hecker of the Rams.
I was just going to bring up Hecker. He's got a really good leg on him.
Yeah. He can do things with the now there's a couple guys like this. Sam Cook of the Ravens can do this too. Johnny Hecker can do whatever he wants with the ball. Like he can, like, there's certain ways you drop it if you're a punter. If you usually drop it flat and you get the tight spiral, but Johnny Hecker can drop it basically sideways. You get that banana ball and it will go out. It can just like spiral out to the right because he's a right-footed. He hits the coffin corners where it bounces like on the one and hops up so that you don't get no fair catch. He hits the super high ones, the line drives. Like he can do whatever he wants with the ball. So just to be able to do that, that's where I look up to be. Because if one day I want to be able to hit a ball, like instead of just hitting the tight spiral, getting the hang time, getting a fair catch, which is what you really want in college, I want to be able to do whatever I want with the ball, you know?
But I always wonder, like, if you were fortunate enough to get a free agent tryout somewhere in 3 years, because really what does one punter get drafted a year? Everybody's a free agent.
If that, yeah, one.
If that, what would it be like, as opposed kicking in San Fran or Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago? Like, do you have to have a certain mindset to kick, to manage the wind, the weather, the crowd versus in a dome? You're going to Atlanta.
This actually ties in with fear, I guess you could say. It really depends on the type of person you are and the type of kicker you are. Like, I mean, you never really think about it. Like, the one thing I hate is I hate kicking in, like, I live in Oregon, and I hate kicking in the rain because the ball gets all soggy and wet. But usually I would say you do have to, when your feet get cold, it's a different type of where you hit the ball. You got to keep moving and everything. But I would think because they're all heaters on the sidelines and things like that, it's mainly about just staying true and having good form over everything. Because once you're at that level, it's really only about because you're like your fractions of a fraction off is a bad hit for those guys, you know. So once you're at that level, like, it's really just about staying true. I would say some guys are more fearful of the wind and the weather, but also I would say some guys are just nice and easy. It's really about who you are. Me, I'd probably just try to keep it the same every time. Now, if there's wind in the face, you drop it a little lower and stuff like that. But like, really nothing changes, especially not for field goal.
But I'm gonna give a challenge to you. Okay. As the only kicker at a high level that I know of. I want you to bring back the barefooted kicker. You watch those, and I remember growing up in the 80s and even into the 90s, the guys coming out, and they would come out in New England. They would come out in Green Bay. Jan Stenerud for the Vikings and the Packers used to kick. You come out there, and I don't know what it was. Maybe because you got a better feel for the leather, skin on skin. And they would, take off the sock. It could be minus 20 degrees. They're kicking the field goal. Like, I don't know. Why was that? Why did that stop? Why did that begin? What's the advantage to that?
I know why it started and why it stopped too. Why it started was because the cleats are so bulky back in the day. They all had the same type of cleats, and so you couldn't really feel it. Like you said, skin on skin, they have better. Nowadays, we have bamboo leather soccer cleats, which is basically skin on skin, but even better because you're wearing like a shoe, So that's why it stopped. If I was kicking in the NFL in the 80s and 90s, I would not have gone barefoot in minus 20 degrees. I don't know how those guys did it and didn't ruin their feet. but that's why it happened is they got a better feel for the ball basically. But nowadays we have that really, really, really nice bamboo leather soccer cleats that are basically not even shoes. They're so thin.
They're like millimeters thin leather kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And basically the part of the bone you hit, the football with is that I know, if you feel your foot, that one really hard bone, like
Kind of in the middle.
yeah, almost like right. If you go right down your big toe and you go down, it's like that big bone right there. That's where you hit the ball every single time. It just flies off. So I'm guessing for their minds, it could just have them like they could hit that every time. But nowadays, you look at Harrison Butker, Mason Crosby on the Packers, Dan Bailey on the Vikings. Any of them, they're all wearing these really, really, really thin cleats because it's so you can feel it, but you also like don't need to be cold feet,
So to bring this to horror, what would the fear of watching a woman get her head chopped off by a serial killer versus 50,000 people? You got a 48-yard field goal with the game on the line. What is going in your head when that is possibly occurring? Is it the same type of fear or is it a different type of fear?
I wouldn't say it's fear at all because you're almost like blacked out in a sense. At least I would be like. So what I always say is like when I was in high school, I've never had a game winning kick in college. I've only had just kicks like in the middle of the game. But when I was in high school, I was gonna hit like I have to hit like a 55-yard field goal to win the game, and I remember warming up. So I'm warming up in my net. And you're basically like tunnel visioned in. So, I mean, there's a little bit of fear, but you're not really feeling it. You're just feeling the adrenaline. You're just in the zone. And then when you run out on the field, and this isn't any like game tying. I've never had a game winning kick. I've had some game tying ones, but basically you're there for the moment. You have tunnel vision, and then as soon as you get back, right before you're about to like take your steps and go, you black out, and then you don't remember anything until after you look up, and then.
Is it possible that kickers can psych themselves out before they even get up to the
Oh yeah.
hash mark? Like they're worried about their mom watching. They're worried about their coach yelling at them. They're worried about I have to make this for a paycheck. Like they got playing with their head before they even kick it.
That's why I say kicking's like a different sport because it's all between the ears. Because not anyone can kick a ball, but if you're a foot athlete, like most kickers in the NFL have translated from soccer, and if you're like coordinated with your feet, and you get really good at it, it's like a golf swing. You're at that level, you can be perfect. But if you're messing up here, that's where you lose it all. Dan Bailey 2 weeks ago, we lost to I can't remember if it was the Bears or we lost. I think it was to the Bears because Dan Bailey missed. He left 10 points off the board because he was just in his head. So it is absolutely true that you're the one who messes you up. And psych yourself out. Now, obviously, you can just miss a kick, and that has nothing to do with your head. You just missed. You hit it bad. But totally, kickers can psych themselves out. I've been in certain situations where I'm not hitting the ball right, and I'm almost about to psych myself out. Thankfully, I've never had a super bad day, but I know exactly how that feels. So, yes, for sure, kickers can psych themselves out.
Like as a punter, have you shanked a kick and it went 17 yards and you just walk to the sideline with your head down and people leave you alone or they give you shit?
If it's one kick, usually depends on the coach, obviously, but some people are like mad, some people are good. Most people are just like, what the hell? I had this one kick in high school. I've never really shanked one in college, but I had this kick in high school where we did the rollout, so it's like the rugby style, and I hit it, and it hit my the people who were blocking for me's helmet. It went straight in the air. I went like 12 yards after hitting him in the head. So
they might as well have gone for it on fourth down.
Yeah. So yeah, you get shit, but like most of the time, it's like, I mean, I can't speak for the NFL, but most of the time, it's like, hey, what the hell happened? And then you just fix it on the next one.
Well, because I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you're gonna mess. Nobody's perfect. You're gonna mess up once in a while, right?
And that's a weird thing about the NFL is like some guys don't get a second chance. Like, all right, you're a quarterback, you're a starting quarterback, you throw 3 interceptions. That's a horrible day, but you're going to start next week. Now, if you do that again, you're probably not start next year, but you're going to start next week. You're a kicker though, and you miss 3 kicks, you're probably out of there. Especially if you're not like
the old Viking kicker Carlson had a
Yeah.
game like he's very inconsistent. I don't know how he has a job in the NFL because he can look all world one week and then go 0 for 4
Yeah.
the next week, and I'm like, how does this guy have a job?
Yeah. That's another thing. But Dan Bailey, because he's a seasoned vet, he was like the sixth most accurate kicker of all time, missed those kicks, came back the next week, made all his kicks, and he has a job. But if you're a new guy in the league, like you said, the Vikings cut him. He's on the Raiders because he found love with the Las Vegas. Yeah, if you're a kicker and you're new and you mess up one, especially 2 games, you're out of there. Probably never gonna have a job again.
Well, think of Martin Gramatica.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was all world for 2 years, and then he was celebrating. He pulled his hammy, and I don't think he ever got a job back. He just out of the league within 2 years. It can happen.
The old kicker Blair Walsh had that one kick
Yep.
against Seattle, and he never was the same. They didn't cut him right after that, but he came back next year and he just couldn't bounce back from it. And so they cut him, and now he's not in the league because of that one kick, really.
Who's the guy from the Bears? The double doink, doink.
Cody Parkey.
Yeah. And
He's
is
on the
he still in
Browns
the
now,
league?
though. Yeah, he's on the Browns.
Yeah. So he bounced back, and most kickers, to be honest, there's nobody. It's very rare a kicker kicks for anybody for more than about 6 or 7 years. They move around. That's part of the job, right?
Yeah. Well, it's part of the job too because no one wants to obviously you're going to pay Justin Tucker if you have Justin Tucker because he's so phenomenal. But most people don't want to pay a kicker more than $5 million for 4 years. You don't want to pay why are you going to use?
Using your perspective, what happened to Janikowski? He went from being all world to being messed in the head.
I think a big thing in Janikowski is not only was he getting older, but he was so not in the greatest shape. Adam Vinatieri, greatest kicker of all time, one of my heroes, he was still in shape, and he could play till he's 46 because you can do that. Janikowski always had a belly on him, always was a bigger guy. So I think once you get to the end of your 40s, I think he was late 30s, early 40s when he stopped kicking. You can't do it if you're he was all power. No, really not. I mean, not that he didn't have any skill. He took 2 steps. His form was ridiculous. And he was all power, great kicker. But I think it was just more that he didn't stay in shape. I think he was more just once you get older, if you're not keeping up with your body, it just kicking's so bad for you. It's so bad it's almost like pitching and with your arm.
And even Vinatieri, I mean, you can't fight Father Time. He hit a wall.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's not in the league this year. I think he's done.
No,
because he after last year, I think he recognized that it's a grind. I don't care what anybody says at any professional level. It's a grind. And at 45, he could be at home. I mean, his kids are probably grown up. He could probably just enjoy being a man,
Yeah.
husband, whatever,
I actually know. So his nephews, so I'm from Las Vegas, and my coach, Nolan Cohorst, I just had him on the podcast not too long ago, but he works for this kicking company, or he is the head of the Champions of Vegas kicking, and he works with Joe Vinatieri and Bo Vinatieri, who are Vinatieri's nephews. So I get to watch Adam Vinatieri's nephews kick every once in a while.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now you have to make that connection and bring on Adam.
If I could do that, man, have Pat McAfee on too.
You get the hits of the hits of the hits.
Yeah.
So here I want to ask you before we close up or anything, what is your all-time 2 or 3 horror movies?
I was going to ask you this exactly right now, so this is
good. Oh, were you? Okay,
yeah.
Good.
All-time 2 or 3 favorite horror movies. All right. I'm going to go number 1, the last Friday the 13th they made, for sure, because that was the first one.
Now, of the reboots or the original series? We're talking Jason Takes Manhattan or Jason,
in space,
Jason X or whatever, or are we talking the ones that were done after?
So I'm going to say this new one, the reboot of the 2009 one. I'm going to say that one with the dude from Supernatural's in it. I can't remember his name. So I'm going to go that just because that jump started my fandom into these type of movies. Okay, what are the other ones? 2 or 3. You know what? I'm actually going to go 1408. Now, there is some speculation of horror. I love that movie. And then I'm going to go Sinister, the first Sinister.
Yeah, I saw that in the theater. Now, here's the other question I have for you. I'll put the hosting. I'll flip it. If you were going to sit with your girlfriend and hold hands and watch a horror movie, which one would you show her to kind of ease her in?
Ease
Give
her.
her a taste of horror, but not make her piss herself. Like one of that kind of a that won't scare her away. Will get her a little bit intrigued. It'll be a good movie, but
Yeah. If I'm gonna, we could have some speculations if this is horror or not. But I just showed her not too long ago to try to do this Shutter Island.
oh yeah,
So I think that was like my kind of trying to get her into there. But like the first gory horror movie that I would show her,
it doesn't even have to be gore. It doesn't have to be gore. It could be psychological horror. It could
yeah,
be a sci-fi horror.
yeah,
You can answer it better than I can.
maybe Alien, the
I
original
was just going to
Alien.
say Alien or Aliens.
Yeah, the original Alien or Alien versus Predator. One of
Okay.
those I would probably show her next because it is action along with horror. I would say.
Yeah, that's a fair one. Or even you go old school and show her Gremlins.
Oh, Gremlins. Yeah, that's a good one too. What
That
about you?
would
What's
be
your favorite?
my favorite 2 or 3. It kind of depends on the day of the week. And my number 1 is always 1974 Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is an absolute masterpiece. This, and what I love about it is that you see the poster, you've heard all the talk about it ahead of time, you have an idea conjured in your head. They don't actually show all that much. It allows your imagination to do anything. You see one of them bashed over the head, and it's a brutal. When you first see it, and Leatherface comes in and he slams the door shut. Yes, you see it right away, but a lot of it is psychological. You see certain things, but they don't show you certain things. And your mind thinks you've seen something, but you really haven't. There's the scene where Sally is hanging from the hook. You don't see her neck go in the hook. You think you do, but you don't. It is an absolute masterpiece. Tobe Hooper in 1974 was very upset that he wasn't given the PG rating. Because back then it was only PG or R. There was no middle ground. And his argument was, there's no nudity. You don't see any breasts. You don't get a single swear word. And there is not that much blood. Why is this not, and why is Jaws PG and why Texas Chainsaw Massacre not PG? I mean, it's some of the stuff is horrific and it's dark and it's whatever. But he made a legitimate argument that it could be a PG film. He wasn't going to win, but it would have been more people getting at the box office, right? So that's my number 1. Anybody listening who has not seen Tobe Hooper's 1974 classic, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, stop what you're doing. I think it's on Tubi. I think it's on Prime. Watch it. I actually had my wife, who's not a horror fan, sit and watch it with me for the first time within the last month. She watched the whole thing. The only thing she said at the end is, boy, that ended abruptly. I laughed. So that's my number 1. My number 2 is Jaws. Absolutely. I'll argue to anybody that Jaws is a horror film. I think Robert Shaw's portrayal of Quint is the most underrated acting performance in American horror cinema, if not all American cinema. I think Robert Shaw, the stories of Robert Shaw being an absolute drunk are 100% true. You want some fun, go onto YouTube, look up Robert Shaw on The Tonight Show, look at Robert Shaw on the old British shows. But his portrayal is absolutely phenomenal. Here's to swimming with bow-legged women. Jaws is number 2 for me. And number 3 is probably at the moment 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland and Leonard Nimoy and Jeff Goldblum. And it's a remake, or not even a remake, an extension from the original from 1955 with Kevin McCarthy. But Donald Sutherland is in my top 10, probably top 5, probably top 3 actors of all time. So diverse, so he gets right into the role, and he's got this gravelly voice. Like he doesn't sound like Patrick Swayze, or he doesn't sound like Tom Cruise. He's not one of those, I'm gonna get a lover and I'm gonna sweep her off her feet. No. He's an everyman, but he plays the role perfectly. And the scare and the implications of it, like we're still talking in 1977, we're talking in the Russians are still a threat. You've got the Chinese are approaching. Does this mean this and that? And the social implications of that film. Anybody that's never seen this film needs to see this. And that ending, I will argue, is among the top 5 movies, period. That last scene where you see Donald Sutherland, I'm not going to give it away, but he's pointing. And I'm sure, Collin, you've seen the film. Have you seen the film? Of course you have. Watch the bloody film. It is fantastic.
That's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time. I hope you did.
I absolutely did. Yeah, I'll come back anytime. We can get into fantasy football.
Definitely.
We can get into, and if you're out in Oregon, maybe, are you a hockey fan?
I am a hockey fan. So I'm from Vegas, Golden Knights.
Golden Knights. Yeah, I grew up playing hockey till the age of about 16 when I realized I wasn't getting drafted, and I was tired of getting up at 5:30 for practices. Mm-hmm. So I love hockey. I love baseball. I'm trying to see if the Blue Jays sign anybody. Now they got some money. Now they got an up-and-coming team. Maybe they'll sign somebody. And I'm looking forward to seeing the Packers in the Super Bowl in February.
I'm not, but it was great to talk to you.
Okay, talk to you later, Cole.
Yeah, definitely. I'll shoot you the links and everything when it's out. All right.
Yeah, do that, and then I can promote it on Land of the Creeps as well.
Definitely, yeah. So I hold on to them for a little bit, so it should be out not this week, probably the next week.
Yeah, just give me a shout, and I'll also I'm pretty sure I friended you, so I'll invite you to the Land of the Creeps page.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, man.